Hello everyone, my name is JoAnn from the Child Development Department at the Walla Walla YMCA, and today I'll be reading part 2 of the book called Viking and Liking It by John Sieska. Last video we ended at the end of chapter 4, so this video I will begin with chapter 5. Let's get started. Chapter 5. The seagull's cry died in the breeze. Amaze our peepers, fill our ear sails, or taste the hammer, or on your land of brains, said Bullsheik. What? Said Fred. He wants to see a good trick, or if they smash in our heads, said Sam, getting the hang of Viking poetry. That's what I thought he said Fred. Fred and Sam looked at me. I looked around at my audience. This was one rough bunch, and anybody who would sail across the ocean in a boat this small and this open had to be a little crazy, too. I started talking to stall for time. I had to come up with a trick good enough to impress a bunch of Vikings who looked like they might really enjoy using their axes, spears, and swords. Vikings and gentlemen, so nice you could be here today. I would like to show you just one of our many incredible powers, so you definitely don't want to sacrifice us or smash in our land of brains. The incredible pick-any-card trick seemed less than incredible for this crowd. The amazing bouncing handkerchief suddenly didn't seem so amazing. One of the biggest Viking audience members picked up Sam with one hand. Can you fly? The other Vikings laughed. Hey, be careful, said Sam. I get mad berserk seasick. I watched the Viking lifting Sam up and down, and then I knew the perfect trick. No, we don't usually fly, I said, but we can call on the power to become heavy as stone. More heavy than a giant, too heavy for any man to lift. Only dwarves come from stone. First man and first woman are from the armpit sweat of a giant, Bullsheik recited. Well, yes, of course, I said. Everyone knows that people come from the armpit sweat of a giant. We do? Asked Fred. Erg, said Sam in midair. And usually it's only the dwarves who know the heavy power of stone. But observe, I held my arms bent at the elbow, right next to my body. Have your strongest man lift me by my elbows. Everyone turned to look at the giant guy holding the steering oar. Skrolf the beast! Skrolf the beast clomped over. I think his one arm was bigger around than my whole body. He put his heavy, meaty hands under my elbows. He lifted me like I was a toothpick. I suddenly had second thoughts about my heavier-than-stone trick. I realized I had never tried it out using a real giant. Now, I said, hocus pocus, third and long, power of stone, hut, hike. I put my hands on the top of my shoulders. But this time, I held my elbow out forward in front of my body. Let two of your strongest men lift me by my elbows now. Another beefy Viking, who was huge enough to play the NFL, flipped back his cape. He and Skrolf the Beast each grabbed an elbow. I planted my feet and held my breath. They tried to lift me. They tried and tried. They tried some more. The Vikings roared in amazement. They banged their shields. They hooted at Skrolf and his pal, but they couldn't lift me. Even Bullsheik was impressed. A small sapling was Joe. His chance did make him a mighty stone. I nodded. I wasn't going to tell him it was actually more of a center of gravity kind of thing. If your elbows are down next to your waist, they are in line with your center of gravity. It makes you easy to lift. But move your elbows out forward, and the lift is impossible for any human. Fantastic, said Leaf. Joe of Stone, chanted the Vikings. With Joe of Stone and Berserker Sam, strong-hearted Leaf kicked the butt of foul snake in the grass. Thanks, I said, giving a little bow. Happy to help. But what was that about a foul snake in the grass? Grim snake in the grass, said Leif Erikson. My cousin set on revenge for a sheep he said my brother once took from him. Well, he doesn't sound like much of a nice guy, I said. Sam threw a left, then threw a right. I'm sure he'd be no trouble for us. Like Bullsheik says, we'd help Leaf kick his butt if we ever ran into him. That's what I noticed the rest of the Vikings taking out their shields out of the rack on the sides of their ship. They put on helmets, tested axes. The oarsmen turned our boat to face the edge of the bay. Bullsheik pointed. We saw another Viking longboat, black and sinister looking, heading right for us. Then he said the words we didn't want to hear. Grim snake in the grass. This will be good. You can use your powers of the runes everlasting. I didn't know Vikings fought other Vikings, I said. Fred picked up a wooden club and found an extra helmet. Chapter 6. Leif's men were ready for battle in about 5 seconds. Let Odin, the god of war, be with us, said Leif. Remember, if you die bravely in battle, the Valkyries will come and take you to Odin's great hall, Valhalla. What in the heck is a Valkyrie, said Fred. Women warriors who fly over battles on their horses, said Bolshevik. They collect only the warriors who die bravely. Die bravely, said Leif. And we'll drink from the skulls of our enemies in Valhalla for all time. The Vikings cheered and clashed their weapons against shields. Now that sounds like a lot of fun, said Sam from under his bedspread, but let's not go to Valhalla to meet Odin just yet. I don't think I'm quite ready. Let's see what they've got, said Fred, fixing his helmet. Joe of Stone spoke the runes. He batted away the storm of arrows. He told the sea to swallow Grim's ship, chanted Bolshevik, warming up. Leif tested the edge of his sword with his thumb and nodded. Gee, I really like to help, I said, but I haven't been practicing my batting away arrows or opening up the sea. Grim's sleek black ship glided across the bay. The dragon head front sliced through the waves. Look first for the hail of arrows, Leif said to me, then the rain of spears. After that, they will fight with an axe and sword to board us. Okay, I said. What else could I say? I had a terrible sinking feeling that Leif and his men were counting on me to actually do something about the hail of arrows and the rain of spears. I didn't want to even think about the axe and sword fight. Grim's ship drew close. I could just make out the shape of a short guy in front. Leif stood tall. I ducked behind him and waited for the first arrows of an all-out Viking sea battle. Leif! Came a call from the other ship. Cousin Leif! Shouted the short guy up front. He holds a white shield of peace, and Bolshevik, not the red shield of war. Probably a trick, said Leif. Stand ready. It's me, Grim, shouted the little guy. We will honor you with a feast. Come ashore. I don't trust that grim snake in the grass, said Skrulf, our steering oarsman. Leif waved his sword overhead and showed Grim a fake smile. I don't either, but it would be an insult and a senseless fight for sure if we refuse. So you don't want me to turn their swords to rubber and make the ocean swallow them up, I said. Leif didn't, and gave the orders to head for shore. And that's how, in what seemed like a time warp of its own, we found ourselves in one of the shortest time warp chapters ever, and in the middle of a Viking feast, instead of in the middle of a bloody Viking battle at sea. Chapter 7. Fred, Sam, and I sat close to one of the 2 giant bonfires burning on the beach. We were glad to be warm and dry. We were glad to be feasting with Vikings instead of fighting with them. Too bad, though, said Sam. He sliced the air with his stick like it was a sword. I was ready to rumble. Ready to rumble up your lunch on my bedspread, said Fred, taking a bite of roast walrus off a stick. I'm a berserker, said Sam. That's how I get ready for battle. I tried a hunk of the dried reindeer meat supplied by Grim. Like beef jerky, I said. Maybe Leif's cousin isn't such a nasty guy after all. He's giving us food and drink. Maybe he has the Viking version of the book to give us. Pass me a hunk of that whale blubber, said Fred. I say we eat now. Worry about that later. Typical, said Sam. Answered Fred with a mouthful. The Vikings seemed to agree with Fred's philosophy of life. Eat now and worry later. Vikings from both ships sat around the fires, eating and drinking like there was no tomorrow. Most of Leif's men sat around our fire. Most of Grim's men sat around the other fire. Anyone watching might have thought it was just a friendly Viking family get-together, but I noticed all of Leif's men sitting just like Leif told them to, with their swords and spears within easy reach. The sun began to sink lower in the sky. Grim stepped into the light between the 2 fires. He was a very short guy with beady black eyes that seemed to always be moving back and forth. He did look kind of snakish. He raised his drinking horn. To my cousin Leif and the end of our feud. To Leif, shouted the Vikings, and they drained their drinking horns. Leif stood up. To cousin Grim. To Grim! Everyone drank. A couple of Grim's men moved around the fire. They filled everyone's drinking horns out of a small wooden barrel. One of the guys with his beard neatly braided into a point pushed a horn into each of our hands. Oh, no thanks, I said. We're two very bad manners, growled the bearded Viking in a very deep voice. He put one hand on his sword handle. We each took a horn. He filled them up with lemonade. To the god of war, someone shouted. To the god of war, everyone shouted back. Fred, Sam, and I sipped our drinks. Blah, said Fred. He spit his drink into the sand behind us when the drink guy wasn't looking. What is this? It's not lemonade. Is it seal juice? It's probably some type of seal juice, said Sam, always our expert. It's like a kind of fermented drink, right? To thunder god Thor, someone else shouted. To thunder god Thor, came the answer. We pretended to drink. The Vikings toasted and drank some more. The sun went down. The Viking beach party got darker as the sun lowered into the sand. The toast seemed to be getting more personal and a bit nasty to each other. To Leif's little warriors. To Grimm's little bootlickers. Bolshevik stood up and raised his drinking horn. That's when I knew things were about to get really out of control. Grimm's men are strong to the death. At least that's true about their breath. Leif's men laughed. Grimm's men did not. A scrawny-looking guy jumped up next to Bolshevik, flipped his sealskin cloak, and struck a pose. Who the heck is this guy? Said Fred. That's Grimm's Scald, Fluluvit, said Skrolf. You're kidding, said Sam. I didn't think anyone would have had a name worse than Bolshevik. Skrolf gave Sam a blank look. He didn't get it. Never mind, said Sam. Go, Bolshevik. Give him what you've got. Fluluvit held his pose. To Leif and his men, advice before speaking. Wipe your nose. Your brains are leaking. Grimm's men howled and toasted. Leif's men did not. Then things got nasty. Bolshevik rhymed something about Grimm's men's with snake in the grass. Fluluvit toasted back with his own rhyme about people who pick their nose. A few of Leif's men at our fire picked up swords and spears. One of Grimm's men slowly put his axe over the one shoulder. Uh-oh, said Sam, sinking under the bedspread. Things are getting ugly. Vikings, brothers, shouted someone. It was Grimm. He stood between Bolshevik and Fluluvit. This is no way to toast, fellow Vikings. Earlf, bring me my special brew. Earlf, who looked as ugly as his name sounded, came out with another barrel under his arm. He filled the drinking horns of Leif and all of Leif's men. I was saving this special brew, said Grimm, but nothing is too good for our friends and fellows. This idea seemed to satisfy everyone. Earlf got another barrel and filled the drinking horns of Grimm and Grimm's men. Skoll, toasted Grimm. Skoll, toasted everyone in return. And about 10 seconds later, Leif and his men started getting sleepy in the cold weather. They fell to the sand. We've been poisoned, said Bolshevik, throwing his horn. Coward, said Leif. He pulled his sword, but fell over before he could use it. Skrolf and a few more of Leif's men stayed standing long enough to draw their weapons and slash a few items with an axe or a spear. Then they dropped to the sand too. Sam, Fred, and I poured out the gross brew everyone else was drinking. Now we were the only ones standing facing Grimm's snake in the grass, and 20 armed Vikings with one zebra bedspread, Fred's wooden club, and any trick I could think of in the next 20 seconds. We didn't need a Skald to tell us. Things look bad for bold Joe, Sam, and Fred. Vikings call it Valhalla. We call it dead. Chapter 8. The sun came up blood red the next morning, and we didn't feel so hot either. Fred, Sam, and I stood on the beach with our hands tied in front of us. Leif, Bolshevik, and the rest of Leif's crew sat with their hands tied behind them. Grimm and his Vikings had not been impressed by Sam's zebra bedspread, Fred's wooden club, or my offer to do a little magic. In fact, we never had a chance. They tied our hands, and they forced us to drink their seal juice, and that was the last thing that we remembered. Now Sam and his Skald Fluluvit walked up and down in front of us. Leif and his little fellows, you are about to be executed. No one will remember you. Fluluvit will tell the saga of the Grimm snake in the grass, the Viking who discovered the new world. Grimm posed for a second. Any questions? No, I didn't think so. My swordsman Gunnar will now have to off you. You are a coward and a dishonor to all Vikings, said Leif. Give us our weapons. Let us die fighting and enter Valhalla. Or we could try to think of something else, said Sam. He looked completely crazy with his hair flying every which way. No, we need to start chopping with our spears or calling in the Valkyries. Bolshevik looked at us. That's right, he said. Grim, you don't know the power of the runes that these Vinlanders know. Grim walked over to stand in front of Fred, Sam, and me. Small waves flashed on the shore. Seagulls called. I still had no idea what they were saying, but I had a bad feeling that I could tell the future, and it had me trying to think of a good trick. Grim's dark, beady eyes looked into mine. He wasn't much taller than me. So what would you know? Would you tell me a poem like Egil told Eric Bloodaxe? Or I would spare your heads? No, I am the skald, said Bolshevik. I would tell a tale. I know, said Grim. I've heard enough of your poems. Start once more, and Gunnar will chop off your head first. Bolshevik looked offended, but he knew better than to annoy Grim anymore. Fine, but Joe the Stone will challenge you. He will show you the impossible if you will set us free. He will? Asked Grim, smiling an ugly smile. I will, I said, thinking the impossible was pretty impossible. He will, said Fred, jabbing me with his elbow, and I will recover a fumble and hand off to our quarterback. I wondered what the heck Fred was talking about. Fred glanced down. I looked down. I saw a knife half buried in the sand under Fred's foot. I got it. He wanted me to distract Grim and his men so he could hand off the knife to Leaf. He'd better, said Sam, because if I find myself in Valhalla, I'm going to be really annoyed, even if I do get to drink out of cool-looking skull-type cups. So, said Grim. I casually moved away from Fred so Grim and his men would have to turn to watch me. The seagulls called, circling above us. I still had no idea what impossible trick I was going to do. I used what I had already heard from Bolshevik that they might believe. I can calm the waves and turn away arrows, I said, but first I must listen to what the birds are telling me. Right on cue, the seagulls called. Behind Grim and his Vikings, I saw Fred crouch down. Aha, I said. I looked up to make everyone else look up. Ah, yes, I said. I tried to think of an impossible trick. The seagull screeched. I see, I said. The seagull screeched. You don't say, I said. Gunnar started to swing his axe. I knew I couldn't keep this up much longer. One of Grim's Vikings drank from a horn. Another Viking stood to put his helmet down on the sand. I looked at the drink and the helmet that gave me the idea for my impossible trick. It wasn't perfect, but... Give me a drink and a helmet, I said, and I will show you the impossible. Place the drink under the helmet, and even with my hands tied in front of me like this, I will drink from it without touching the helmet. Grim looked doubtful. One of the men jammed a drinking horn in the sand and covered it with a helmet. I held my tied hands together over the helmet and stalled for as much time as I could for Fred and Leaf to get free. Watch me closely, very closely, I said, trying to keep everyone's eyes on me. I leaned over and stared at the helmet. Abracadabra, clink think, nose picker, punt kicker, sim sam, drink. I closed my eyes and pretended I was drinking the drink through an invisible straw. Ah, there, I said, and looked up at Grim. Grim looked back to me with his snake eyes. He lifted up the helmet. I grabbed the drinking horn and took a sip. See, I drank from the horn without touching the helmet. Grim and his men stared. A few guys laughed, and they got in, and they all started to laugh, all except Grim. Very clever, said Grim. Will we honor you by chopping off your head first, Gunnar? Chapter 9. So it wasn't my greatest trick ever, but I never expected to get my head chopped off for a bad trick. Leaf stepped forward with his hands still behind his back. I guess Fred hadn't gotten the knife to him in time. Cousin Grim, said Leaf. So are you both a disgrace and a liar who would not honor your promise? Leaf. Don't be a bad person, said Grim. Years from now, no one will even remember your name. It is my name that will live on forever in the saga of Grim who found the new land. Give them a few verses, Fluluvit. Fluluvit stood next to Grim and lifted his sharp nose into the air. Brave Grim on the ocean was storm-tossed. Leaf and his little fellows got themselves lost. Wow, said Fred. You are Fluluvit. Grim turned on Fred. Maybe your head should be first. No, first I have a short verse that might interest you, said Bullsheik. Bold Leaf with Snakebiter showed Grim, the real fighter. Now, what is that supposed to mean? Said Grim. Yah! Screamed Leaf for an answer. It was a true battle cry that both surprised and froze everyone. Fred had got a knife to him and freed everyone's hands while they were watching my trick. Leaf grabbed Grim in a chokehold with a knife to his head. Grim's men were so shocked that they never had a chance to move. Squirrel flattened Gunner and snatched up his sword. Bullsheik sacked Fluvid. Leaf's men blitzed and the rest of Grim's Vikings before anyone could make a move for weapons. Sam hopped around, flapping his zebra bedspread. Fred piled on, then helped tie up Grim and his Vikings with the same ropes they had just been holding us. In minutes, we were standing on the same beach, but in a completely different way. We were free. Grim and his men were the prisoners. Now the sun didn't look so blood red. It looked kind of like a wonderful gold. Leaf the Lucky was saved by Vinlandler Fred. And then Grim Snake lost his head, chanted Bullsheik. Really? Said Sam. A soft breeze blew from the ocean. Leaf the Bold looked at Grim and his men, deciding their fate. Viking law demands that the guilty be punished in a way that fits the crime, said Leaf. The sun looked a dark red color again. Chapter 10. The wind picked up. Dark clouds drifted in from the ocean. The punishment should fit the crime, said Leaf. His long hair and beard streamed in the wind. Leaf and his men held their swords, spears, and axes again. Grim and his Vikings stood together in a bunch, their hands tied behind them. Chop off their heads like they were going to do to us, said Bullsheik. That fits the crime. Or maybe just their hands, 'cause that was what they were going to use to do the crime, said Squirrel thoughtfully. Or maybe, I don't know, said the axe-carrying Viking. He demonstrated a smashing chop on a nearby piece of wood. Or maybe cut their tongues for the crime, said another guy. Then Leaf's Viking started thinking up some really gross punishments. Or maybe they need to take a very long time out until they learn to get along with others, said Sam. Said Fred. Leaf listened to everyone. He looked over the land and then out over the ocean. Yes, I have the punishment to fit the crime. From the way Leaf said it, everyone knew he was in charge. No one asked, no one questioned, but I did wonder what punishment would fit this crime, and how bad would it be? Grim and his men didn't lose their heads. They didn't lose their hands or their tongues or anything. Leaf had his men untie him. He put them back on their ship with everything except their weapons. Grim said, Leif Erikson, you wanted so much to tell your saga. You wanted people to remember your name forever. Your punishment will be to have people remember the saga of what a coward you are forever. Grim, Fluvit, and the rest of the Vikings on board looked like they had lost everything. And I guess in a way they had. They would not be remembered as heroes of Viking history. Their names would not live on in any saga. Leif had shown that he was the real hero without even fighting. Leif's men pushed the black warship out into the wind-whipped waves. Grim and his men had no choice but to go. Oars stroked the waves. Grim's losers raised the sail and disappeared into the approaching storm. Leif turned to Fred. Young warrior, take this. Leif handed Fred the knife with the antler horn handle. The knife that Fred had used to free Leif's hands. The knife that had saved all of our heads. Its name is Snakebiter. Brave Fred, Berserk Sam, and Magic Joe saved Leif and his Vikings. All will know, said Bullsheik. Leif's Vikings began to pack up their ship. They stowed supplies and clothes in their chests and used them as skeets. They pulled out their long oars. So, will you go with us back to Greenland, or stay here in Vinland with your people, said Leif. Sam looked nervously down the coast. Those guys with the bows and arrows? Well, we really don't know them that well. Maybe we should go along with you just to keep you safe for a while. Maybe the book will turn up somewhere we go raiding along the way, I said. Fred slid Snakebiter into his belt. Well, let's go a Viking. I looked over Vinland. It was a wild, empty-looking place. No sign of anything that might be part of a certain book. It looked like I was going to be a while before we got back to our land, our time, and our NFL Smash game. Leif smiled. You have proved your worth. Sail with us. The wind blew a stinging blast of sand down the beach. Dark clouds covered the sky. I took one last look at the land. Skrulf was the last Viking ashore. He was just packing dirt and sand around the big tombstone-shaped rock. He waved us up. "Come see Skrulf's runestone, and then we'll go," said Leaf. "Sure," I said, but I wasn't really in the mood for any more rune tricks. Fred, Sam, and I walked up the beach with Leaf and Bullsheik. Skrulf showed off his handiwork. The stone was half buried in the ground. It had what looked like a bunch of chicken tracks carved into it. "We've made it for you," said Skrulf proudly. "Read it." "Read what?" I said. "I thought you said you didn't write anything down." "The runes," said Bullsheik. He pointed to the children track carvings in the stone. "I've got some sand in my eye," I said. "Skrulf, you should read it. You did such a nice job carving it." Skrulf beamed at the compliment. He stood back and read the chicken track runes. Joe, Sam, and Fred were here, with Leif Erikson and his men in this Thor's day. Thunder rumbled in the sky above. "What did you say?" said Sam. "Joe, Sam, and Fred," Skrulf began again. No, said Sam. "That last part, is that what those scratches are? Writing? Runes? Thursday? Thursday? Thunder kaboomed. A faint wisp of green mist snaked around the runestone. Everything suddenly made sense. Thursday was Thor's day. Thor was the Viking god of thunder. The runes were Viking writing. So, the writing on the runestone was the Viking version of the book. Sam chanting Thursday triggered the Viking time warp that got us here. Chanting Thor's Day with the runes would get us back. "Thor's Day, Thor's Day, Thor's Day," sang Sam, berserking around in his bedspread. Thunder boomed. A storm of green time-traveling mist swirled up over us, and we Vikinged out of there, leaving Leif Erikson to explore Vinland and Bullsheik to tell the strange saga. Chapter 11. We stood staring at the NFL Smash game. The team jersey on the screen was the Minnesota Vikings. They had horns on their helmets. "I can't believe it," said Sam. I said, "I wasn't the only one who said don't say it," yelled Sam, tackling me. Fred checked his belt. "Aw, I didn't get to keep the snake biter." "You remind me of the Liberty Bell," said Sam, half cracked. "You better not go to the zoo. People will try to feed you," said Fred. They were so glad to be back in our time, back in Fred's house, and so busy cracking on each other that we never even heard Fred's brother come in. "What are you little fellows doing playing my NFL Smash game?" said Fred's big brother Mike. He dropped his gym bag and stood over us, looking bigger than Skrulf. "You know I could NFL Smash you." Thunder rumbled outside. I tried to think of what Leaf would do in a situation like this. I said, "Bold Fred, Magic Joe, Berserker Sam, I say, sometimes it's good to run and live to fight another day." "What?" said Fred's brother. "Hike," yelled Fred. We tried to run for it. I left Sam right. Fred ran up the middle and got caught. Sam and I couldn't leave Bold Fred all on his own. We had a saga to live. So Magic Joe and Berserker Sam bounced Fred's brother off the wall, even though it surely meant early entry to Valhalla. And that is the end of the book. What a crazy Viking story that was. I'm glad that the boys ended up being safe and were able to return home. Even though the older brother, Mike, is a little scary, I'm glad that they have each other to protect each other and go through all of life's different battles with. Thanks for tuning into this story.